Everybody. My name is Ethan. I wanted to thank you all for coming out tonight in this amazing weather. I'd like to introduce you to Josh Libman. He has been working at the Kane County Forest Preserve for 12 years now as a naturalist, where he gives guided hikes and educates the community about our forest preserves. And before I pass it to Josh, just feel free at the end of the program to check the tables at the back. I've got some library materials and related books and brochures if you feel inspired to pick up the hobby yourself or just learn more about the hobby. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Josh.
Thanks for coming out, everybody. It means a lot. I didn't want to be lonely tonight. So yeah, working at the Forest Preserve, nature education is a passion of mine. And it's nights like this, I can't believe I get paid to come and talk about birds, So we have a burgeoning bird watcher here. What about everyone else? Would you label yourselves as bird watchers, or would you came to a program about it, so you're curious about it. I see the hesitation in labeling yourself as that it's a very intimidating subculture to get in on. There's a lot of folks who know a lot, but want to let you know that they know a lot.
I'm a bird watcher.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So my chat today isn't to teach you the tricks to identify every single bird around you. It's more just to kind of like, it's a platform to just tell awesome stories about birds and connect as a community here and open it up and make it like a more welcoming space for people. So titled Avian Adventures, we're gonna give you guys a good mindset here of how to approach looking at mystery birds and figuring out how to use a field guide to identify what's visiting in the wintertime and then leaving in the spring, or hitting up your backyard feeder that you put out. So a lot of the information I'll share with you guys is coming from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's like the premier source of information for bird watching. They do so much great stuff, including eBird. I'd say if you start contributing to eBird and looking at that, you gotta call yourself a bird watcher. But it's an awesome citizen science project where people go out on adventures, either sipping coffee in your yard, looking at a feeder, or traveling to a specific site to look for a target species of bird, and you post observations there. And real world science and scientific conclusions come from this that, have like legislative impacts on federal land purchases and things. So it's like kind of cool to think that you're involved in a greater thing in that way. So eBird's an awesome community to look in on. And Cornell Lab also has a Merlin app. It's free, download it on your phone. I usually, when I get out on the trail, I discourage the use of technology. It's a space to be mindful in nature. But that app is just wicked cool. I mean, it's like a 1,000-page field guide in your pocket. And it can record bird calls and help you identify them with the sound waves and everything. So that's a fun app to explore if you haven't yet. But all of these tools, if you start delving into it, you're going to see there's like thousands and thousands of species to parse through. In fact, in Kane County alone, there's over 300 species of birds you can look through. So it's like a really daunting task to like open a field guide and be like, well, what's this bird? It's like, where do I even begin? So the best mindset to have when you're looking at something is assess these characteristics. And this is kind of what we're going to delve into a little bit here in terms of more specifics. But the size and shape of the bird, the color pattern of the bird, its behavior, and its habitat. Where did you see it? When you ask yourself these questions, it's going to really narrow your search for identifying a bird. So instead of flipping through hundreds of pages in a field guide, it'll point you to a specific section, and you'll only have to parse through a page or two and hone in on specific species. These are my two favorite field guides. The Peterson guide has illustrations, like drawn illustrations, which are good for general characteristics. Ted Floyd here uses actual photographs, which is cool, but every bird looks a little different. So just depends on how your brain likes to work. If you like illustrations, check out a Peterson guide, they're great. So let's look at size and shape. Not the sexiest variables to pay attention to on a bird, but like the most useful in my opinion. Depending on weather conditions, the state of the bird, and all sorts of things, fine details like color and pattern and things like that are going to be difficult to discern. But the size and the shape of the bird are always going to be very consistent, and that's going to definitely help narrow what you're looking for here. So you can think of that as an exercise of like becoming familiar with silhouettes. In low light conditions, off in the distance through a thicket of shrubs, all you catch is just the general outline of a bird. That gives you a boatload of information. So before jumping to conclusions and shouting out what you think this bird is, describe its silhouette. Say it in your head or say it out loud if you like. But what sorts of features stand out in the overall shape of this bird?
Long neck.
Yeah, a long S-curved neck.
It's got like the stick-like feet.
A spear-like bill, very long, stick-like or spear-like bill, and incredibly long waiting legs. Based on those details, does anybody have a guess as to what species we have? You find them along the river.
Great blue heron.
Yes, indeed, a great blue heron, a solitary hunter in our area. I'll still see some of those even in January, just lonely along the river hunting as long as they can find open water. But they tend to migrate in general. So we see less and less of them now. In the summertime, it's a classic scene along the Fox River. You'll see a great blue heron.
Where did they go to? Like, how far did they migrate?
They're short distance migrants, so wherever there's open water. Some go to Tennessee, some go to Florida, some hunt along the Gulf of Mexico. They often follow like flocks of egrets, those white, big, beautiful white birds that remind me of Florida. So they don't travel a great distance. There's a pretty striking silhouette here. Small little fella, and we notice a deep fork in its tail. That stands out for sure. Its wings, look, extend beyond its body. It's got a teeny tiny little pea head there. This is a barn swallow. Well adapted to on the fly, open their mouths up real wide and eat insects. And they'll build mud nests. In the corner of barns is where they get their name, or under awnings of your house, maybe you might see them, and raise their babies there. Here we've got a pointed crest, a long tail, and that thick beak. This is a classic bird. Who's got it in their gut? Who's feeling like they know this one? You've all seen it, I guarantee you. Yes, look at that. Trust your gut. The northern cardinal, a beautiful resident bird. So even in the winter, they'll stick around. It's a beautiful scene, the white backdrop of snow with that royal red, the cardinal. And it's one of the few species that the female will also sing. And she'll often have a longer and more complicated song than the male. And she'll usually perform that when sitting on the nest. So it's kind of like, she's sending the fella out to the grocery store to get eggs and bread and milk and everything. It's kind of funny to think about the connections we have with these animals. But typically in the realm of birds, the males are going to be the prominent ones. They got the crazy feathers. They're doing the vocalizations. It's all sexual selection. They want to look robust and strong to impress a lady, but when those gender roles are kind of flipped, it's always interesting, and cardinal is a good representation of that. They also have a very small range. They won't move around a lot from once they fledge their nest. So if you have one that visits your feeder, it's pretty much going to spend its whole life like around you. It's like your little cardinal, your backyard cardinal. So endearing to think about. Here we've got a very sharply pointed bill. When looking at the silhouette of this fella, big old flat head. What were you saying was your favorite?
The red-winged blackbird.
Oh, the red-winged blackbird. Often referred to by some bird watchers as nature's a-holes. They are famous for their aggressive behavior. This is the most numerous bird in North America. They're everywhere. And in the summertime, males become flooded, their brains just become flooded with testosterone. So they spend 90% of their waking hours in territory defense mode, making a harsh call and mobbing or attacking potential nest predators. So they'll go after hawks. They'll go after bike riders and hikers and bird watchers and things. we often get calls at the nature center of people getting attacked by them. They'll poke at your head, man. But they're a highly polygynous species, so one male can be in charge of up to 9 different nests with 9 different females. So I always cut them slack, it's like they got a lot on their plate. And all of those nests may have been sired by a different male, and they're unaware of it. It's like a whole soap opera drama happening in the marsh, it's like crazy. So, yeah, this is what I mean about, there might be a pretension in the bird watching community. Some folks wouldn't value this bird. They would say, garbage bird, I don't want to waste my time watching it. But I'm here to spread the word of, everything has intrinsic value. And there's cool stories to be had about, this aggressive little hothead that inhabits our marshes. So I love a good red-winged blackbird too, for sure.
And then the females are completely different, right? Because they're like brown and they're tiny, they're smaller.
Yeah, sure. So some species of bird, or any animal for that matter, males and females look exactly the same, but there's something called sexual dimorphism, where the female will look vastly different from the male, and birds express that in a lot of species. So the female is very drab brown and cream colored with stripes, and she's just real buffy and messy looking. Her role in that ecosystem is to blend in, to hide, camouflage, sit on nests. The male's job is to fly up and flash that big red shoulder patch and lure any potential nest predators away. A hungry coyote or something, they're going to go after, that and get distracted. So that's what I mean about spending like most of their waking hours in territory defense. They make themselves known for sure. Yeah, they're a funny bird. So that's just an image to show you why it's so important to pay attention to the shape. This is a poster of all the warblers that will migrate through our area. If you even delve into level 1 bird watching after this, you're going to get hooked on the warbler scene in the springtime. It's just a wild tropical, mass of birds coming through our area in every color you could imagine, oranges and reds and blues and greens. It's crazy. So if you went off color alone, I saw this blue bird with, this kind of stuff. It's not going to lead you anywhere in a field guide to identify it, but the overall shape of this bird is consistent. They all look like little warblers. They're small little passerines or songbirds that have needle-like bills for eating insects. So you get to know the shape of a warbler, and that's a much better clue than just the random color that you saw. You have a question?
You said there are like 300 species in Kane County. That's like always here kind of thing. And then how many pass through?
That number includes migrants. So just the number of species that have been identified in Kane County is like 328. But then if you go out to like Illinois in general, it's like 450. And then, the larger your range, it gets up into the thousands. I mean, there's just so many birds out there. So that 328 includes warblers that will pass through. So at any time it can surge, in the winter there might be a few less, although there's a lot of birds that come in from them. So it's like an ever-changing cast of characters, and that's that number encompasses all that.
On that top row, the 4th one to the right there. That's kind of the color of the one that's in the backyard.
Okay, so you say you see this in the winter though only.
Yeah. I don't know if it's the same one, but it's
Sure.
same color.
These in that plumage or that color, that would to me be a sign of spring. I would see that in like May.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced
when they
it's
leave.
that. But I have other birds that are coming up, and I'm thinking it's going to be one of those. For sure. I'm keen on identifying that one for you. So shape overall, think about those silhouettes. Size is a little more difficult to determine. It's, you don't know exactly how far away a bird is or how big the branch it is it's sitting on, but a useful tool is to get used to what I call the usual suspects, which happen to be a sparrow, a robin, and a crow. Everyone's, pretty familiar with the look of these birds, and they happen to be perfect examples of small, medium, and large-sized birds. So a question you'd ask yourself at the feeder or along the river or wherever you see a mystery bird is it smaller or bigger than a little sparrow that I'm used to seeing? And that really helps to narrow your search down. So a few just like in the field examples. We got 2 birds here, a goldfinch and a grosbeak. That, at a glance, if you get 3 seconds to see this bird as it's flying by or flying away from you, you're going to see bold patches of black, yellow, and white. But the relative size will really help narrow it down. So if it's about the size of a little sparrow, it's a goldfinch, but a more robust, bird that's larger than a robin, it really would stand out. Would be an evening grosbeak. If they're in between, like cedar waxwing here is in between a house sparrow and a robin, and a blue jay here is in between a crow and a robin. Blue jays are in the crow family, they're corvids. So like 20, 30 years ago, we saw like a huge plummet in their population. People hardly saw them around here. West Nile virus, like just wiped them out. You didn't see crows, you didn't see blue jays. But now the survivors basically have passed along, genetically resistant individuals. And we're seeing a huge increase in their population now. So you put out seed, you're going to get some noisy blue jays coming. But just a stunning bird when you get binoculars on it. The mottled blue pattern, on them is just unbelievable. That's every hue of blue you could imagine. It's so cool. The realm of woodpeckers is useful as well for size. Our teeny tiny little downy woodpecker, or the large as a crow pileated woodpecker. It's a useful tool. It's just, how big is it? Compared to that cast of characters, the sparrow, the robin, and the crow. You can also measure the bird against itself. Meaning, like, look at the size of its bill. If it, in this case of woodpeckers, if its bill is smaller than, the size of its head, we're looking at our smaller downy woodpecker. If its bill is about the same size as its head, this is subjective and difficult. It's just a fun little trick for you. It would be the larger hairy woodpecker. But field mark wise, if you were to look them up in a field guide, they look almost identical. So this bill differentiation is a useful way. A lot of hawks work that way too, like how long is the tail compared to the size of its body, things like that. So compare the bird to itself, different features is a useful tool. Color pattern. This is why I think people get into bird watching. Like Mother Nature provides just a kaleidoscope of diversity. So it's really a fun thing to see all the colors out there. But keep in mind, at different times of the year, birds are going to look different. Males, when they're migrating through looking to breed and attract a female, they're going to be bright, they're going to be luminous, they're going to have newly molted feathers. In the fall, when they're migrating back, they're beaten and broken and tattered, and they've molted into a drab, plumage. They don't want to stand out, they're looking to get to their winning grounds and refuel so they can start it all over again. So overall, pattern is more useful than like specific colors, because feathers can wear and tear, and you might not see what a field guide's telling you that you see, but like light and dark or whites and blacks are very consistent and easy to spot even at a glance. So a perfect example here is a bobolink. Look at a little bald poke patch on the back of his head there. It really stands out. Even across a field, if you just catch this bird flying away from you, that color pattern of light on the back and dark on the belly really stands out. And if you think about it, like most other birds are quite the opposite. They're going to be dark and mottled on the top and light on their belly, just as an evolutionary mechanism to avoid getting eaten. Hawks and owls flying overhead, it's a lot easier to blend in if you don't have a big white patch on the back of your head. So the bobolink turns this idea on its head. Again, sexual selection, the dumb things males do to attract a female's attention. So a female would look at that and say, oh my gosh, if this bird can make it to sexual maturity with that color pattern, he has quality genes that I want to combine with. So that's an attractive feature that I want to reproduce with. So it leads to these wild color patterns that help stand out and differentiate birds. So bobolink, it's a classic grassland bird in our area. We always love to see birds out in the tall grass prairie. It's just such a disappearing ecosystem. So bobolinks and other grassland birds are jewels to be appreciated for sure. That light and dark pattern is super useful when you're looking for ducks. Like the ringneck duck, is light in the middle and dark on the perimeter, whereas the northern shoveler here is dark in the middle and white on the outside. When it comes to ducks, you're usually looking through a spotting scope way off in the distance, or you're sitting on a boat and they're far away. So the color pattern is really useful to pay attention to. Blue is always a great color to encounter in Mother Nature. It's pretty rare. in flowers and in birds. So the indigo bunting, just a striking royal blue throughout, whereas the eastern bluebird here, look at that 3-color pattern. It's like a Neapolitan ice cream, I think, like that's the perfect divide of color there. And more powdery blue. Your Jeopardy fun fact of the day. These feathers are not actually blue. There is no pigment dyeing them blue. There are little mirrors, little microprisms on the end of their feathers, on the end of the barbs of their feathers that reflect the blue wavelength back at us. The pigment dyeing these bird feathers is melanin, it's brown. If you see an indigo bunting on a cloudy day or in the shade of a tree, they're brown, they're drab. When the sun comes out and hits them, the blue wavelength comes out of this and reflects this iridescence. So it's a trick of the light. They're not actually dyed blue. What's up?
Same for blue jays.
Every blue bird, yes, that you would encounter is not blue pigment. So yes, blue jays are tricking you as well. It's pretty wild. Great blue herons, belted kingfishers. Whereas like a cardinal is red. It eats berries. Those berries have carotenoid compounds. Those then translate into their body and they dye. Pigment goes into their feathers. There is no blue pigment making these feathers blue. They're brown. But when the sun hits them, oh my God. And then you imagine birds see the world in the ultraviolet light spectrum. So whew, what does that look like, in that wavelength? Oh my God. That's always a fun fact to share. It blew my mind when I learned that. Like, oh my God, it's just a trick of the light.
That's only blues? Only blues you said?
I'm sure it's the case for others, but like browns and reds and greens, those all come through as pigment. So blue, I just know, but I bet there's something else in nature that does that. But I couldn't say definitively. This is a species of woodpecker in our area. You'll see them often foraging on the ground. They'll probe the soil for ants and things like that. So you usually are flushing them. They're flying away from you. And you get a lovely view of that white rump patch, they call it. They got a big white flash on their butt as they fly away. So once you get used to like seeing that, I mean, you'll see flickers everywhere. And like if you start to learn how to catch those flashes of color, you're like, oh my God, that's kind of cool. Is this your bird?
It's a lot like.
I think this is your bird, man. I was waiting to get to it. The dark-eyed junco is a winter migrant. They only come here like starting just now. And they'll last all winter long, but then in the spring, they head up to the boreal forests of Canada. They get out of here. So I think in the right light, this has like a bluish gray, and this might be the mystery bird.
Yeah, that's the one.
So if you see it in your yard, people look out as it flutters away. It's a very prominent white lines on its tail. Like you'll definitely see their outer tail feathers are like a flash. And they'll flicker it, so it's like a very noticeable thing. So I hope you catch that. That would be so rewarding if you were able to nab yourself a dark-eyed junco. So that's a flash of color is useful to pay attention to. And then of course there's birds, that have such outstanding color. It's kind of why people get into it in the first place, such as the scarlet tanager and the Baltimore oriole. It's like, come on, man, like you don't have to go on vacation. The vacation's coming to you. That's unreal, the color you're getting. And it's especially nice when the common name of the bird, matches up to the pattern or the thing that you're looking for, like yellow-headed blackbird. I can remember that,
And so all these are in this area here.
Oh, for sure. Everything I'm showing you can be found here in Kane County.
You mentioned like what for each one when you come through, like where they're most prominent or whether they're like harder to find or spot or not. It's like a lot of these like that. I mean, I'm not in nature enough, but like I haven't seen a lot of these that I sort of think I'm aware.
Sure. I would think the overall tone of my discussion today is if you start to get into looking at the birds that are around you, you will be astounded at the diversity of things that are even around you in your suburban yard. Like you can attract a Baltimore oriole easy. You tack up an orange slice on the side of a tree or put out a little tray of grape jelly at the right time of year, like what would say April. It's unreal the amount of birds you can attract to your yard. Or see, at our local forest preserves. That's what I'm here for. Like, go visit our open spaces. We have all the habitat for all these birds. So yeah, if you're looking to keep notes, like the two of the biggest hotspots in our area to like see most of the birds on this presentation would be Nelson Lake Marsh and Muirhead Springs. Those are like, you could just nab like so many species of bird there. And that's Muirhead is up north, 47 in Gilbert's, not Gilbert's, a little farther south, Huntley.
So, yeah.
And Nelson Lake is in Elbert. So you could have a
The Muirhead?
Muir Muirhead,
Muirhead.
Muirhead Springs,
You can look them both up just like that and it'll give you
and Nelson Lake. Those are like some major bird watching hotspots that are awesome. Burnage Forest Preserve, also in Elgin, I would say, is an excellent. This is a pretty place to hike too. That has a lot of diversity. So yeah, if you're planning the day trip, for sure, hit those up. They're fun. And Muirhead is like a developing story. There's a lot of restoration work going on there. We're going to be installing an observation deck there, so it'll be fun over the coming years to visit that site and watch it change. It's a great story there. Maybe for another day though. But yeah, those are some great spots. So yeah, I mean, there's some rarities for sure. Like you got to just get lucky, but it's crazy how many different cool birds there are like right around us. Pretty common. Such as the rose-breasted grosbeak. I mean, that'll come to your feeder and eat, black whale sunflower seeds from it. It's nuts. All right, behavior. How a bird moves, presents itself, perches, what's its posture like and things like that. Real indicative and really a useful clue. But this one especially calls into play that mindfulness that I really think bird watching is good for. Like this meditative state of just like being in the moment and like allowing yourself to share space with this animal. Like in my early days, I was so eager to identify stuff. I'd see it and immediately just like start rifling through a field guide. Then the bird flies away and you missed your moment with it. So especially when like getting used to an animal's behavior, and that's why I especially like the chickadee. Their behavior is but there's so many cool things that chickadees do that you can only see by just watching them. So that's like the mantra is like you come across a bird. Don't even put your binoculars up for like the first couple seconds. Just like look with the naked eye, see where they're at and what they're doing. Then you hone in on it, look for field marks. And then after the bird's flown away, refer to your field guide. And then you can, you'll read certain things and be like, oh yeah, I totally saw that, especially with behavior. So like posture is a good one. How does it present itself when it's perched? Flycatchers like this kingbird, even off in a distance, you can see in this peewee, they have a very regal, like upright posture. And you'll notice that and like start to recognize that as a telltale mark of a flycatcher. So boom, you can open up your field guide and you're only parsing through, 2 pages as opposed to 400. So this is in contrast to like vireos who hunch over. They're like much more horizontal, their orientation in the woods, and their head's always on a swivel looking for insects. So right off the bat, you can glean a lot of information, at a glance of just like, how is this bird perched? How's it look? How's this posture? And then you can really start to look at, even at a distance, field marks, like 2 wing bars and spectacles. It looks like he's wearing glasses. Those are like fine-tuned detail, but you start with like the big picture. Look with the naked eye, where's it at, how's it perched, and then you hone in on more detail there. And maybe the first couple of blue-headed vireos you see fly off before you ID them, but it was a cool experience to share it with them for a minute there, So here's a unique habit. You can see tail pumping. You see how he's just nervously twitching his tail like that? Very indicative behavior of an eastern phoebe. This is an evolutionary mechanism to signal to a potential predator that the phoebe is aware of its presence and is no longer worth pursuing. So they tested that in the lab by exposing phoebes to the call of a Cooper's hawk. And you watch its tail pumping like quadruple. So the faster that animal's pumping its tail, the more it's signaling to a hungry bird of prey off in the distance, like, don't even try, man. Like, I know you're there. I'm going to be bolting as soon as you take off. So it's a nervous habit to fend off predators. We can see the spotted sandpiper bobbing in the water, matching the flow of waves and the ripples in the water as it flushes, insects and macroinvertebrates under the stones and cobbles of our creeks. They exhibit this behavior upon hatching. They haven't quite like honed in as to why they do it, but a lot of our shorebirds bob like that. It's really indicative behavior of that type of bird. So spotted sandpiper is always fun to see. Hovering, epic display of hunting that you'll see something like a belted kingfisher just hovering over the water and then flashing into the water to catch a fish or something as it scans an area. So you'd combine a number of things to help you identify this. That hovering behavior is unique and not everything does that, but then look at the habitat we're in here. It's a wetland, it's a marsh. Only certain birds are gonna forage for food in that kind of a habitat. And then look at the size of that thing's head, man. So just those 3 clues alone at a glance, you could, train yourself to just know, oh man, we're looking at a belted kingfisher here. Whereas another bird hovers like this is a kestrel. They're going to do it in an open field, like a grassland or a prairie or a farm agricultural field, and they'll go down and hunt for rodents. So similar behavior, but totally different habitat. So you can start to distinguish those clues that way. It's thought that birds of prey like this will hover over fields because they can see again in the ultraviolet light spectrum. So they're scanning a field looking for rodent trails, urine trails that rodents will leave behind that will kind of glow in the ultraviolet spectrum. So they'll follow that back to an emergence hole or a den and wait for a rodent to emerge and then go down and get them. So they're tracking them by following their urine trails, kind of wild. That's how you get breakfast. Waterfowl exhibit a lot of really cool feeding styles that are very indicative. It helps you narrow down your choices. Dabblers, like mallard ducks, the green-headed mallards, or Canada geese, they stick their head, in the water and they eat aquatic vegetation. Their butts go up in the air. Filter feeders like this shoveler, they have like a comb-like structure on their bill and they just, sift through the surface of the water. This allows different aquatic birds to occupy the same habitat. So they're accessing food at different depths and in different ways. So one wetland is able to support many more kinds of life. So it's just like an evolutionary mechanism of take advantage of the resources that you can, access. So, you'll find mallards and geese cohabitating because geese are getting aquatic vegetation that's, a foot deeper. So they're not foraging from the same place, they're not competing with each other, and it allows for greater diversity. So it's always cool to see that. Diving is awesome. Check out this bufflehead. He's gonna dart underwater. I didn't know that. When I first started bird watching, I didn't know ducks could dive like that. It blew my mind along the Fox River to see a bufflehead do that. Some species can dive, 80 feet underwater, and they'll forage for crayfish and mussels at the bottom of lakes and quarries and things. Their bodies are just so well adapted. Their legs are set really far back on their bodies, and they just propel themselves underwater like a dolphin or something. It's unreal. But at the cost of being like totally useless in a terrestrial environment. You're never going to see a bufflehead walking on the land. Their anatomy isn't built that way. They're water birds. Whereas like a mallard or a Canada goose, they can be aquatic and terrestrial. They can walk around on land and forage for food that way. These guys are specialized to go deep, but at the cost of being confined to water. So when they migrate, they have to follow riverways and they have to have migratory stopover sites at wetlands and ponds and things like that. They can't stop in the middle of a cornfield and rest for the night. So kind of an extreme adaptation. They're water specialists. And then you get used to feeding styles like this scratching behavior. You'd never see, a woodpecker scratching around in the leaf litter like that, but an eastern towhee will expose, insects and macroinvertebrates and slugs and worms and things like that in the soil while they're foraging for food like that. So that scratching behavior is very indicative of a towhee. Our largest sparrow in the area. So that's a great view of you think about a sparrow as like this small little brown bird that lives in shrubs in the city. Look at the color pattern on that fella and that striking red eye. So there's diversity everywhere around us. A bird's propensity to be solitary or to associate itself in a flock is a very good clue as to what you're looking at here. In the summertime, you're much more likely to see a shrub filled with goldfinches than a shrub filled with yellow warblers, which are much more solitary. And birds will mix in flocks. They will associate with other species as they move. It's like safety in numbers, you can think. So it's crazy to think in the fall, in the spring, when they're migrating, red-winged blackbirds tolerate each other. There's safety in those numbers as they're traveling a great distance. But when they get to their wintering grounds or their breeding grounds, there's a chemical change and they'll kill each other, literally, you know? So right now, there's safety in numbers. How many different kinds of bird can you see in this mixed flock?
At least 3.
4.
Oh, who counted 4? Let's see. You're exactly right. I see 1,
Red and blackbird.
2,
Then that.
3,
Over.
4. This little blurry image is enough to know that we're dealing with a mixed flock here of red-winged blackbirds, yellow-headed blackbirds, brown-headed cowbirds, and European starlings. That white or that yellow bill gives that away as a European starling. So again, there's always more than meets the eye when you see this, flock of what looks like just blackbirds. Look at that! There can be so many different species associated in that flock. It's crazy. And here's an awesome image of a murmuration, it's called. It's like a school of fish, imagine, in the ocean. But look at the synchronized aerial acrobatics going on up there. How are they not flying into each other? It's unreal. Starlings are another one of those birds that bird watchers love to hate. Technically, they are considered an invasive species. They do harm to the environment. We look to remove them. They were introduced. They're from Europe. And there's a great introduction story. Like, we live in a very connected world nowadays. So things are sometimes accidentally brought to other parts of the world. This one, though, was a very intentional introduction. A fella in Central Park back, I forget when, in the 80s, wanted to introduce to Central Park all of the birds mentioned in the works of Shakespeare. So he brought over this small flock of starlings, and they took over. I mean, you'll see them everywhere now. So the unintentional consequences of mankind happening before our very eyes. But they will flock in a really interesting way. Those murmurations are super cool.
They're still studying how those work, right? Because there's like.
Oh, for sure. Like, we don't even understand like how their orienteering abilities. We know they have like these sensitive whiskers that come out of their bills that pick up on like vibrations of wing beats next to them. I don't know, there's just so much information their brain is processing. It's fascinating for sure. Yeah, you gotta love that. So again, I got value for that.
Do they travel far like that, or is that just like when they're coming together to, like in the evenings, it seems like you see pictures or videos of that?
That's a really good question. How often do they travel in a murmuration? I don't know, to be honest. I just know it's a phenomenon. I imagine it's migratory behavior. Like in the summer, you'll see starlings, in a much smaller flocks. They're always usually together, but it might just be 5 to 10 of them. I don't think they're always traveling in these massive flocks. So I think that is a mechanism of migration. So at only certain times of the year, but I don't have like a hard answer on that.
But
It's a
then
good
do
one.
they like kind of get up and get organized and go for? Because it seems like these are when they're just sort of like, I don't know, shifting around to find a place to land or something, or is that not?
Yeah, there's a phase of hyperphagia that a lot of birds will go through, which basically means stuffing themselves and building up fat reserves. So I think that'll be often a case too. They'll fly together and associate in a flock because it's easier to find food that way. So it might be around migration, but it seems random because they're building up their fat reserves as they hit your feeder up. I mean, a murmuration like that will like empty your feeder in the night. It's crazy.
When I was raised up in northern Iowa, and we had an area that would have maybe 100,000 either starlings or blackbirds
Sure.
every night. They'd all come back to the same place.
That's
You
cool.
couldn't walk in that, because it was just white. The ground was.
You're dropping?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it was just, you couldn't hear yourself think if you were anywhere near that many of them, but they always were there.
That's cool. That's a good memory. I always notice too, it's like a cacophony of noise, but then when they take off, it's like silence for a few seconds. It's like a very stark difference. For sure. Where'd you say that was?
It was in northern Iowa.
Iowa.
In fact, the town right next or south of it, Mason City, they had like a preponderance of bird disease and for lungs because they had such a tradition of areas where they congregate, like that, you know. Of course, you got cornfields all the way around.
Yeah,
there.
for sure. A lot of food
But-
there for them.
Yeah, but they all come back to the same place all roost at
A
night.
good roosting site, huh? That's interesting. Wow. All right, habitat. We've kind of already alluded to it. Is a very useful tool in terms of figuring out what you can expect to see. So the main habitats in our area, if you're going to go hiking in our forest preserves, we have woods and forests. Lots of old oak trees and thickets of maple trees and things like that. We have tall grass prairie, open spaces of grasses and flowers, not a tree in sight. We have our wetlands, marshes and fens and bogs, and then the river, the Fox River. So different species of birds are going to associate. They're going to be more likely to be found in certain habitats. Like the easiest example, you're not going to find a woodpecker in the prairie. Ain't no trees, man. So woodpeckers, nuthatches, creepers, these birds are going to heavily associate with woods and forests. So if you're going hiking and you're pulling into a new site, you just look around and go, okay, I'm hiking in a forest today. There's going to be a set of characters I can expect to see. And then some I can kind of eliminate from hoping to see. So it's a really useful tool to almost like bird by statistics, or probability here. So a great example of birds preferring different habitats are our wrens. These are all different species of wren, teeny tiny boisterous little birds that always perch and kind of cock their tail upwards like that. It's a real indicative posture that they'll assume. And you can always tell it's a wren. I don't know, when they land and they fork that tail up like that. But what kind of wren, if you're really looking to get to what species are we looking at? Well, we have house wrens that prefer open forests and backyards. We have sedge wrens, which prefer grassy meadows and prairies and things like that. And we have marsh wrens that like it wet. So it's a real useful tool when you're hiking somewhere here and you see like a cattail in maybe like a marsh setting. We would have a marsh wren. Here along a fence post near a barn or a house, what do you think we have?
House.
Yeah.
A house wren! See, it's nice when it matches up like that. Excellent. And then out here on a grassland, with our flowers and sedges, we'd have a sedge wren. So we can't always rely on that. It's important to look at the field marks and all that, but it's a great example of just like, if you hear a wren or you see a wren and you're in a grassland, you're probably looking at a sedge wren. It's a very useful tool to then you can look at some finer details.
How'd you get the picture of the marsh wren?
What's up?
How'd you get the picture of the marsh wren?
I know, right? That was our wildlife biologist has a really nice camera and often gets to go out on surveys. So you get some nice pictures from your colleagues. Range maps are a very useful tool, and that app I was telling you about, the Merlin app, that I encourage all of you to download. There's a whole section for every species of bird. It shows you a range map, where in the world you're likely to find it, and at what time of the year you're likely to find them. So at a glance, these birds look the same: a Bullock's and a Baltimore Oriole female. But a quick glance at a field guide, and you see the Rocky Mountains serve as a nice geographic barrier between the two species. So you're not going to really see one where you see the other. So that was useful. We narrow our search down. Similar story here with a cardinal. And see how much I love the Sonoran Desert. I just can't help but throw desert species on there. The Pyrrhuloxia, I saw the Sonoran Desert visiting my grandparents. At a glance, you'd think it's like some desert cardinal, but a look at a range map, cardinals occupy most of the eastern United States. The Pyrrhuloxia only pokes up into North America in like Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and things like that. So not going to see one of them around here, Don't have to waste your time looking at field marks of them. And then time of the year as well. We've been hopefully narrowing our search down to your dark-eyed junco, which is a species of sparrow. We have a lot more sparrows than meets the eye. There's an incredible diversity of them. Some will migrate here for the spring and summer, and then they migrate, farther south for the winter. But at the same time, there are Arctic species of sparrow that spend the summer up in the evergreen forests of Canada near the Arctic Circle, and then migrate down here for the winters, like specifically for our winters. So when you look at a what do you call it, a range map, you can see different colors here will help tell you when during a year they're going to be. Are they breeding in that area in the spring and summer? Are they only migrating through? Or are they spending, time, like, are they overwintering? And then sometimes it'll tell you if they're year round, like you can see them, no matter what season it is. So these would be our summer sparrows, like a field sparrow, savanna sparrow, Henslow sparrow. But at this time of the year, they gone. They migrated away, and they've been replaced by an equally splendid cast of characters here: the tree sparrow, the white-throated sparrow, and the white-crowned sparrow. All right, this is a chapter I've been delving into over recent months. There are lots of phrases when it comes to learning bird calls. It's very I mean, it's like learning a foreign language. It's unbelievable the amount of sounds that a bird can make. How can we, associate them with specific birds? It's one of the most useful tools, though. Like, I can't tell you how many more species of bird you'll identify around you if you listen for them. Some you'll never see, but like they become a part of your everyday because you hear them. What's that?
Marshman.
Yeah, for sure. Marshman's a great example. You hardly ever see him, but you'll be hiking and it's there. You can report it and feel like you're still experiencing it. So there are some goofy phrases that birdwatchers have associated with different species of bird, and I've been having fun learning them. I'll share a few with you guys. Such as what I think should be our national symbol, the black-capped chickadee. This teeny tiny boisterous little guy who's here year round. A few of the phrases, you have to use your imagination, they're corny, but if you latch onto them, it's crazy how helpful they are. Like, you'll hear it out there and it's so rewarding. So this first one, listen for him calling his name. Chickadee-dee-dee, chickadee-dee-dee. And then, so that is a call versus a song. So there's different uses for these, just like, we have different forms of communication to accomplish different things. Calls are there to defend territory, to alert your flock of potential predators. So like in the case of a chickadee call, that's like an alert call to other members of the chickadee flock in the woods. And the longer those D notes go, the higher the perceived threat. So like a red-tailed hawk swoops into the area, you're going to hear a major agitation, and there's going to be, it's a very long, like, chickadee-dee-dee-dee-dee. I mean, they're just going at it. But, if a small group of bird watchers comes by, we get like maybe 2 or 3 Ds. Like, we're not too high of a threat. But they notice us and they communicate that. Versus like a song is there mainly for reproduction. It's the male getting up there and trying to sound as robust and, attractive as he can. And the delicate little chickadee calls out, "Spring's here, spring's here." So see if you can hear it. I love that call. It's a sign that spring is right around the corner. So a few more. The eastern towhee, another sparrow in our area. My wife, it took her a long time to latch onto this one, but one day she was out, she heard it, and she goes, "Oh God, I heard it," and now she hears it everywhere. Drink your tea, but you gotta put a little gusto in it, so it's like, drink your tea, drink your tea. So see if you're gonna hear it. Drink your tea. They're silly, but come on, you can't help but notice it, It's useful. And this is another one that's incredibly hard to see. They spend most of their time in the thickets, but you'll hear that, and if you're keen on looking for them, that's when you can focus your search and be like, "Oh my gosh, I want to see an eastern towhee." So now I'm going to take a couple minutes here and look for them. Yeah, it's a much more common bird than you realize once you learn their call. You can be walking through, and sometimes it's just like everything blends together, and you can't really parse anything out. So you just kind of tune it all out. But then you'll hear like this little singer off in the corner, and you can really focus your energy on trying to find them if you're keen on it. So drink your tea is always a fun one for me. The tufted titmouse, another one you hardly, or I don't see it that often, but you'll hear it everywhere. It's a very common song in our woods. as he yells out, Peter, Peter, Peter. Let's see if we can hear it. I mean, it's totally there. You know? I love that. Right. The red-eyed vireo. One of the most boisterous songsters in our woods. They'll spend, a good portion of their waking hours singing all day long. They're just incessantly taunting you from up in the canopy. Here I am in the tree. Look up at the top. We're getting more, obscure as we go on. But again, allow yourself to hear it. It's so there. So here I am in the tree. Look up at the top. We'll go again. It's obscure. It's funny. Very common bird, and get that pattern even, just like the cadence of it really helps you get through. This is one of my favorites. It's a winter sparrow, and I heard it maybe 2 weeks ago for the first time. So, you tap in with the rhythm of nature and the changing of the seasons, and all of a sudden, walking my dog outside one morning, I hear, poor Sam Peabody. And I go, oh, winter's right around the corner, man. So you hear the white-throated sparrow, only here in the winter. So here, it's totally poor Sam Peabody. Can't you hear it? Then you see that beautiful yellow eye lower there. It's a really ornate, beautiful looking sparrow that makes itself known by calling out in a melancholy way. Oh, the browns, this one's pretty out there for sure. But keep in mind, this one's to more highlight the pattern. This is a mockingbird or a mimid. So they will copy the sounds of all sorts of things in their environment. Sometimes they'll mimic like the revving of a chainsaw or like the honking of a truck horn. But they will always repeat it twice. That's the thing to pay attention to here when you're listening for this call. There are a few other species of mockingbird in our area, like a gray catbird, but they'll only call once, and then that one ends with like a cat's meow. This one will always repeat whatever it's calling twice. But I mean, their vocabulary can be thousands of different phrases. It's unbelievable, and every time they sing, it's a different series of vocalizations. But they always repeat it twice. So plant a seed, bury it, cover it up, let it grow, pull it up, eat it. See if you're gonna hear stuff like that. Hear that double pattern? Very indicative. And that was just like a tiny fragment of their vocalization. They just go on and on and on. It's unbelievable.
Do you record these as well?
These sounds, since I've been delving into it, I did not record these. They're from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. It's such a fun site to just get lost and go down a wormhole in, and you can get all these vocalizations and all that stuff from there for sure. But that's a future project for sure. Go out with a nice boom mic. I'd get up for that. That's awesome. All right, real quickly at the end. I mean, you're all here, so you understand the value in it. It's just interesting to know what's living around us. Sometimes that's enough of a reason to get into something. But a few other reasons why it's good to study birds. We're losing them at an alarming rate. There was a study that came out a few years ago highlighting just bird populations in general since the 70s have just plummeted by over 30% now. They're indicators. They are canary in the coal mine. They're if we're losing birds, they're so associated with the health of an environment. Something is going on. Shouldn't we pay attention? We're a part of this environment too. Posting your observations, a fun way to partake in citizen science. Look up eBird if you're keen on all this stuff. It's a great way to direct your trips. You can see, this person saw this bird at this site. I'm gonna go check it out, see if I can find it. And feel like you're a part of a community of people who are engaged with nature. And it's a great way to practice mindfulness, just allow yourself for a minute to go out and all you're doing is walking around looking for birds. And that's good enough, that's a good enough activity. This was a good news story of, people who care about birds, who pay attention to birds. Seeing the McCormick place in Chicago is just famous for its window collisions. It was like a tragedy. You think about these epic migrations that birds are taking. They like die by that is like so lame. So they put on these UV window stickers and to major success. Like I forget what the figure is, but the percentage of window collisions that they had post putting these up was next to nothing. Like
It went down from whatever, how many thousand to like 120.
yeah, it's like the success story is there, and just like a simple thing that a big corporation can do to have an impact and be a part of the community, I think is a great story. And it's just a great excuse to get outside and have fun. That's the main takeaway. Explore our open spaces. So thank you guys so much for coming out. Warms my heart. And have a great rest of your evening.